Hello, my wonderful and amazing friends. Welcome back to another wild ride through stories of pure entitlement, where some people think the world revolves around them until reality hits back. Today's story, it's a tragic yet infuriating tale of a Karen who let her own arrogance get in the way of common sense, and it cost her dearly. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's dive into one of the most frustrating stories you'll hear today. I used to work for a medical supply delivery company. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it was important. I delivered hospital beds, IVs, and oxygen concentrators, things that people needed to survive. Most of the time, the families were grateful. And then there was Karen. She wasn't the patient, her husband was. And let me tell you, this man was not okay. I could hear him wheezing from across the room, struggling for every single breath. His face was pale, his chest rising and falling like he was trying to breathe through a straw. It was bad. I was there to deliver a portable oxygen concentrator, a device that could literally save his life. But the moment Karen saw it, she wrinkled her nose like I had just rolled in a pile of garbage. Ugh, this is black? I blinked. Yes, ma'am. This is the standard model. It's medical grade, hospital approved, and works perfectly. Karen scoffed. I don't like it. Do you have one in dark purple? At first, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I explained that we only had them in black, baby blue, or tan. She crossed her arms. None of those will match my living room. Meanwhile, her husband was sitting there gasping for air like a fish out of water, and she was rejecting a life-saving device because it didn't fit her aesthetic. I was trying to stay professional, but holy hell, this was next-level stupidity. I offered her emergency oxygen tanks instead. They weren't as efficient as the concentrator, but they'd buy them a few hours in case of an emergency. She refused. They're too big. Don't you have the small ones? You know, like the little ones on TV? I told her those are only good for 10 minutes and aren't meant for critical care. But nope. She wanted what she wanted or she'd take nothing. And so, she took nothing. I left. No oxygen machine. No emergency tanks, nothing. Then at 2 a.m., my phone rang. It was Karen screaming. My husband, he can't breathe. We need that concentrator right now. So now it was an emergency? I rushed back to the warehouse, grabbed the concentrator, and sped to their house. But when I got there, Karen met me at the door, crying hysterically. We need the breathing masks too. I frowned. The ones I left earlier? You should have them. She looked away. Oh, I threw those away. My stomach dropped. Without the masks, the concentrator wouldn't work. I told her I had to drive back to get more. It would take an hour. But 20 minutes later, my boss called me. Turn around, it's too late, he's gone. All because Karen cared more about aesthetics than her husband's life. I've met a lot of difficult customers in my time, but Karen, she was in a league of her own. It started out like any other delivery. I pulled up to the house with a portable oxygen concentrator, a machine that would literally keep her husband alive. Simple drop-off, quick setup, and I'd be on my way. Except, the moment she saw the device, her face twisted like I had just handed her a bag of garbage. Ugh, this is it? I nodded. Yes, ma'am. It's a top-of-the-line concentrator, medical grade. It runs continuously, so your husband will always have a steady oxygen supply. She crossed her arms. Why is it black? I blinked. Because that's the standard color? She let out this exaggerated sigh, like I had just insulted her entire family. No, I can't have this in my house. Do you have one in dark purple? At first, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I explained that we only had them in black, baby blue, or tan, all of which worked exactly the same, but Karen just shook her head. Those won't match my furniture. Meanwhile, her husband was wheezing in the background, struggling to breathe, looking like he was on the verge of passing out. And she was out here rejecting a life-saving device because it didn't match her decor. I tried to keep calm. Ma'am, this machine is critical for your husband's breathing. The color doesn't affect how it works. I highly recommend taking it. I want one in dark purple. I had to physically stop myself from face-palming right there. Since she was being impossible, I offered an alternative. Emergency oxygen tanks. They weren't as efficient as the concentrator, but they'd buy them a few hours in case of an emergency. She scoffed. Those are too bulky. Don't you have the little ones? You know, like the kind on TV? I sighed. Ma'am, those are travel models. They only last 10 minutes and aren't meant for long-term use. She threw her hands up. Well, then I don't want anything. I just stood there, speechless. Her husband was practically gasping for air like a fish out of water, and she just shrugged it off like this was some home decor issue. I did everything I could. I begged her to at least take the oxygen tanks, but nope. She refused everything, and so I left. No oxygen machine, no emergency tanks, nothing. And that decision, it would come back to haunt her. I've dealt with difficult customers before, but Karen, she was on another level. This delivery should have been quick and simple. I was bringing a portable oxygen concentrator, a device that would literally keep her husband alive. I figured I'd drop it off and explain how to use it and be out the door. But the second she laid eyes on it, she scrunched up her face like I had just handed her a dead rat. Wait, this is black? I nodded, not sure where this was going. Yes, ma'am. It's a medical-grade unit designed for continuous use. It'll keep your husband's oxygen levels stable. She rolled her eyes. No, I can't have that in my house. Do you have one in dark purple? I blinked. Excuse me? Dark purple, she repeated like I was an idiot. I hate black. It doesn't go with the decor. I looked over at her husband. The guy was wheezing, struggling for every breath, his chest rising and falling like he was trying to breathe through a straw. He looked bad, and here was Karen rejecting a life-saving device because it didn't match her living room aesthetic. I tried to stay professional. Ma'am, this is the standard model. We do have a few others, but they only come in black, baby blue, or tan. She let out this exaggerated sigh, like I had just ruined her entire life. Ugh, none of those work. I was trying so hard to be patient. Ma'am, the color doesn't affect how the machine works. Your husband really needs this. I don't care. You need to find me a different one. Oh my God. I wasn't shopping for decorative pillows. This was medical equipment, and her husband's literal survival depended on it. So I tried again. All right, if you don't like the concentrator, we can at least set you up with emergency oxygen tanks. They're bulkier, but they'll keep him stable for a few hours while you sort things out. She waved her hand dismissively. Those are too big. What about the small ones? You know, like on TV? I sighed. You mean the portable canisters? The ones that last 10 minutes? Ma'am, those aren't meant for critical care. Your husband needs something that will last days, not minutes. She huffed. Then I don't want anything. I just stared at her. This woman was choosing nothing, literally nothing, over a life-saving device just because it didn't match her furniture. Meanwhile, her husband sat there gasping for air, like he was drowning in his own home. I begged her. I tried everything. But Karen, she refused it all. So in the end, I had no choice but to leave. Karen's husband was struggling. I could hear his ragged breathing from across the room, every inhale sounding like he was trying to suck air through a clogged straw. His face was pale, his chest rising and falling way too fast. The man needed oxygen immediately. I turned back to Karen. Ma'am, I understand you don't like the concentrator, but your husband's condition is serious. I strongly recommend you take it. She waved her hand like I was annoying her. I already told you, I hate the color. I'm not putting something so ugly in my house. I wanted to scream. Was she serious right now? Okay, then let's try a different solution. I went back to my van and grabbed an emergency oxygen tank. It was bigger than the concentrator, but it would at least keep her husband breathing for a few hours. This tank will give him a steady oxygen supply, I explained. It should last long enough for you to sort things out and find a machine you like. Karen, she rolled her eyes. That thing is way too bulky. It'll look awful in the living room. I took a deep breath, trying not to lose it. Ma'am, I understand your concerns, but this is about keeping your husband alive. We need to get him oxygen. She crossed her arms. Don't you have the small ones, like the kind on TV? Oh, she meant the tiny travel-size oxygen canisters, the ones meant for hiking or short flights. I shook my head. Those only last about 10 minutes. They're not designed for medical emergencies. She huffed. Well, I don't want something that big. Find me a smaller option. I was done. I had been more than patient. I had offered multiple solutions, and every single time, she refused because of how it looked. I turned back to her husband, who was now clutching his chest, looking worse by the second. I begged her, please, just take the tank. If something happens. She cut me off. I said no. If you can't bring me something smaller and prettier, then just forget it. I just stood there, stunned. This woman was choosing nothing over a life-saving device because she didn't like how it looked. Meanwhile, her husband was dying in front of her. I had no other options. I looked at the man one last time, wishing I could do something, but without her approval, I couldn't force the equipment on them. So with no choice left, I packed up my gear and I walked out the door. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. I groggily looked at the screen. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to pick up. The moment I did, a panicked voice shrieked through the speaker. It's Karen, my husband. He's struggling to breathe. We need that machine right now. Oh, so now it was an emergency. Just hours ago, she had flat out refused to take the oxygen concentrator. I had begged her to reconsider, but no. She cared more about the color of the machine than her own husband's life. And now she was desperate. I didn't waste time. I jumped out of bed, threw on some clothes, and grabbed my keys. Within minutes, I was on the road, speeding toward the warehouse. The entire drive, my hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I knew this was bad. I grabbed the same concentrator she had refused earlier, threw it in the back of the van, and sped to their house as fast as I could. When I pulled up, Karen was already outside, sobbing, panicking, barefoot in her pajamas. The second I stepped out, she lunged at me, grabbing my arm like a lifeline. Hurry, we need the breathing masks too. I frowned. The ones I left earlier, you should have them. Karen's face froze. She looked away. Oh, those. I threw them away. My brain short-circuited. She threw them away. I had left those masks for free, just in case they changed their minds, and this idiot had tossed them out like they were garbage. Without those masks, the concentrator wouldn't work. I looked over her shoulder. Inside, her husband was slumped over in a chair, his chest barely moving. I felt sick. I turned back to Karen. Okay, I have to go back and get more. It'll take me about an hour. Her eyes went wide. An hour? He doesn't have an hour. I stared at her. She had done this. This was her fault. And now suddenly, she was acting like I was the problem? But I didn't argue. I ran back to my van, slammed the door, and floored it toward the warehouse. I was halfway there when my phone rang again. I knew. Before I even picked up, I knew. I answered. It was my boss. His voice was flat, emotionless. Turn around. It's too late. He's gone. I let go of the wheel for a second, staring at the road. Karen had let her own husband die over a damn color. My stomach dropped. Without those masks, the concentrator was useless. I looked past Karen into the house. Her husband was slumped in his chair, gasping for air, his lips turning a shade they shouldn't be. His chest was rising and falling so fast, it looked like his body was fighting for every last bit of oxygen. And the worst part? There was nothing I could do. I turned back to Karen, my voice tight. Ma'am, I have to go back to the warehouse to get more masks. It'll take me at least an hour. Her eyes widened in panic. An hour? No, he doesn't have an hour. Oh, now it was urgent? I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her. She was the one who refused the concentrator hours ago. She was the one who threw away the masks I left behind. And now? Now she wanted me to fix it all in 5 minutes? I forced myself to take a breath. I'll go as fast as I can. I ran back to my van, threw it into reverse, and peeled out of the driveway. My hands were shaking as I gripped the wheel. This wasn't just another delivery. This was life or death. And I knew, deep down I knew, that I probably wasn't going to make it back in time. But I had to try. The roads were empty. I pushed the speed limit. Every red light felt like it was mocking me. And then, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. My boss. A sinking feeling settled in my chest. I answered. His voice was flat, emotionless. "Turn around, it's too late." I didn't respond. I just kept driving. "You hear me? He's gone." Gone. I let go of the steering wheel for a second, just staring at the road ahead. He was alive when I left. Barely hanging on, but alive. Now, he was dead. And for what? Because his wife, the woman who was supposed to love him, care for him, fight for his life, refused to take a machine because it wasn't the right color? Because she cared more about her furniture than her husband's ability to breathe? I gritted my teeth, my hands shaking against the wheel. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to go back and demand she look me in the eyes and admit that this was her fault. But I didn't. I just turned the van around and drove back, knowing it didn't matter anymore. When I pulled back into Karen's driveway, I expected to find her devastated, crying, in shock, grieving. I mean, her husband just died. But when I stepped out of my van, she wasn't crying. She wasn't in shock. She was furious. The second she saw me, she marched up to me, her face red, her eyes wild. "This is your fault," she shrieked. I just stared at her. "Excuse me." She pointed a shaky finger at me, her breathing ragged from pure rage. "You should have made me take the machine earlier. You should have worked faster. You should have..." I held up a hand. "Are you serious right now?" This woman had refused the oxygen machine when I delivered it, thrown away the mask I left as a backup, ignored every warning I gave her. And now she wanted to blame me? I felt my jaw clench. My heart was pounding. "Ma'am, I offered you everything," I said slowly. "I told you, I begged you. You chose nothing." Her eyes flashed. "Don't you dare talk to me like that." She was losing it. Her whole body was shaking, her fists clenched at her sides. "My husband is dead because of you." I took a step back. My hands were shaking too, but for a different reason. I was done. I had seen some messed up situations in this job, but this was a next-level delusion. Before I could say another word, my boss's car pulled up. "Oh, great, here we go." Karen immediately spun around and ran to him, sobbing. "He let my husband die. He refused to bring the machine when I needed it. He... I watched as my boss turned to me, his expression cold and calculating. I could already see the gears turning in his head. Karen was a customer. I was an employee. Someone had to take the fall. "We need to talk about this incident," my boss said stiffly. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. Because if he thought I was going to stand here and take the blame for this woman's stupidity, he had another thing coming. I shook my head, tossed the keys to the van on the hood of his car. "Nah," I said, "we don't need to talk." I turned, walked straight back to my car, and never looked back. I stood there for a moment, just staring. Karen was still screaming at my boss, her voice shrill and broken, flipping between rage and hysterics. "He let my husband die. He refused to bring the machine when I needed it. He... My boss barely looked at me. His eyes were locked on her, calculating, already deciding how to handle this situation. I knew exactly what he was thinking. Karen was a paying customer. I was an expendable employee. Someone had to take the fall. "We need to talk about this incident," he said. His voice was flat, corporate, cold. I laughed, a small, bitter chuckle, shaking my head because this was so predictable. I wasn't going to stand here and listen to him try to twist this into being my fault. Not after everything. Not after she refused the machine. Not after she threw away the masks. Not after I did everything I could to stop this from happening. I took one last look at Karen standing there in her expensive robe, her house pristine, untouched, like nothing happened. But inside, everything was different now. Her house was quiet, her husband was gone, and she had no one to blame but herself. She got exactly what she wanted. No ugly medical equipment ruining her living room. No bulky oxygen tanks messing up her space. Just silence. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the keys to my work van. I tossed them onto the hood of my boss's car. "Nah," I said, "we don't need to talk." And just like that, I walked away. I could hear my boss calling after me. I didn't stop. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove off. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat. I wasn't going to be the guy who took the blame for someone else's stupidity. And I definitely wasn't going to work another second for a company that backed people like Karen. I never found out what happened to her. I don't know if she ever processed what she did. Maybe she convinced herself it really was my fault. Maybe she woke up one day and realized the truth, that her own selfishness killed him. I don't care. Because that night, when I quit, it was the best decision I ever made. I know what you're thinking. Did Karen do this on purpose? Did she actually want her husband dead? At first, I wondered the same thing. I mean, how do you rationalize someone refusing a life-saving device over something as stupid as color? How do you wrap your head around a person who would rather let their spouse suffer than have something ugly in their house? But here's the thing. I don't think Karen was evil. I think she was just that stupid. Some people have never had to face real consequences. They go through life so entitled, so self-absorbed, that they genuinely believe nothing bad can happen to them. They think they can demand whatever they want, whenever they want, and reality will bend to their will. Karen was one of those people. In her mind, this wasn't about life or death. It was about getting her way. She treated the oxygen machine like a shopping preference, not a medical necessity. She thought she could argue and complain and stall until someone magically brought her a purple machine in the exact size she wanted. Because that's how everything else in her life had probably worked. And by the time she realized she wasn't in control, it was too late. She wasn't used to consequences. She wasn't used to being wrong. And that night, reality hit her like a truck. Her husband paid the price for her entitlement. And when she finally saw the damage, she couldn't handle it. That's why she tried to blame me. Because admitting that she caused his death, that was too much. She had to believe it was someone else's fault. She had to convince herself that I was the reason he was gone. Not her own stupidity, her own selfishness, her own refusal to listen. But deep down, I think she knew. I think when she went to bed that night, alone with no sound of her husband breathing beside her, she knew. And that's a truth she'll have to live with for the rest of her life. I never heard from Karen again. Not a phone call, not an email, not a complaint to the company, nothing. After that night, it was like she disappeared from my world completely. And honestly, I didn't care. The company, on the other hand, tried to sweep everything under the rug. They wanted to pretend it never happened. Just another unfortunate incident. Nothing to see here. No accountability, no lessons learned, just business as usual. But me, I was done. That night was my breaking point. I had already been sick of the job, the endless overtime, the corporate nonsense, the bosses who would throw us under the bus to save face. But Karen, she was the final straw. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't stand the thought of walking into another house, dealing with another entitled customer, watching another person suffer because someone in their life refused to accept reality. So I walked away. I left the medical supply field entirely. Let someone else deal with the Karens of the world. I was done trying to help people who didn't want to be helped. And Karen, well, let's just say she had all the time in the world now to find a machine in dark purple, if she still cared. And that, my friends, is the tragic, infuriating story of a Karen who let her pride get in the way of common sense. What do you guys think? Could Jake have done anything differently? Or was Karen just beyond saving? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there, and for the love of all that is good, don't be like Karen.